I've always been a big fantasy fan, and the series that got me into anime and manga were all fantasy based. Now, while I have significantly broadened my interests, I'm still always on the lookout for a good fantasy series. So, when I saw Nanatsu no Taizai, or the Seven Deadly Sins, my curiosity was immediately piqued. After catching up with the most recent chapter that's been released, I have mixed opinions. Am I enjoying reading it? Certainly. Is it good? Well, that's debatable. Nanatsu no Taizai is set in the Holy Empire of Britannia, where two inhumanly powerful groups of warriors vie for power. The Black Knights and the Knights of the Round who... wrong Britannia. Anyways, this Britannia is medieval and magical, and the two groups of warriors are called the Holy Knights and the Seven Deadly Sins. 10 years before the start of the story, the Holy Knights soundly trounced the Seven Deadly Sins and forced them into hiding. The Holy Knights then revealed they're not all that holy, as they stage a coup d'etat and overthrow Britannia's king. The royal princess Elizabeth manages to escape and then decides to search for the Seven Deadly Sins. Her logic being that if the Holy Knights are bad, surely the Seven Deadly Sins must be good and they'll help her regain her throne. Now, under any normal circumstances, Elizabeth probably would have been captured within the first 5 minutes of her escape. If she did manage to escape, she probably wouldn't be able to find the Seven Deadly Sins, and under the miraculous situation that she managed to escape and find them, they'd probably turn out to be just as rotten as the Holy Knights, if not worse. However, because apparently she has the luck of the gods, Elizabeth manages to make good her escape, and just so happens to bump into Melodias, the leader of the Seven Deadly Sins, who turns out to be a nice guy, if a bit perverted. Anyways, he agrees to aid her in her quest, and the story then progresses as they set out to find the remaining members of the Seven Deadly Sins. The plot thus far has been decent but unremarkable. It has the same basic formula as Ravemaster, Magi, Fairy Tail, and pretty much any other high fantasy story you can think of. You've got your skirmishes with minor villains, tragic backstories through flashbacks, and vague hints at the dark plans of the main villains. Nothing too much out of the ordinary. It also shares those stories' sense of humor, which is to say often funny, but just as often immature and possessing a fair amount of fan service. The characters are a mixed bag. I'm not a big fan of either of the main protagonists. The female lead, Elizabeth, essentially fulfills the role of the damsel in distress most of the time, and while she's brave and kind, her personality is also kind of bland. The male lead, Melodias, Sin of Wrath, is slightly better. He's happy-go-lucky most of the time, but when the situation demands it, he can become deadly serious, and in those situations, he's actually pretty cool. He's also seriously perverted, however, and loses a lot of the coolness factor for that. The other protagonists we have are Hawk, a talking pig, Diane, Sin of Envy, a jealous giant who has a crush on Melodias, Ben, Sin of Greed, an immortal trickster, and King, Sin of Sloth, a sentimental king of fairies. Special mention here goes to Ben, who is easily my favorite character in the series thus far. He never takes anything too seriously, and trolls pretty much everyone he encounters. Just by being in the story, he raises its quality. With regards to the villains, there hasn't been anyone particularly notable other than Gira, a female Holy Knight who gets bonus points from me for being unflappably calm while manhandling Melodias, Diane, and Ben at the same time. She's also creepy as hell. Her smile makes me shiver. Now, as you probably already guessed by the fact that the story has a giant, an immortal, and the king of fairies among its protagonists, the battles start out at a pretty high level. That meant in the first couple of chapters we saw a couple of pretty ridiculous landscape obliterating moves, but the author seems to have toned that down slightly as the story progressed. Probably a good thing, otherwise the world would have been destroyed by the 10th chapter. It's kind of interesting though to have a group of main characters that starts out strong instead of going through half a dozen different training arcs and power-ups. I'll be interested to see if the author can keep it up. Some other general comments about the manga: the art style is pretty good and fits the tone of the story well. The author also has yet to use any really ridiculous character designs, which is an added bonus. Lastly, it's published in Weekly Shonen magazine, which means it has weekly releases. Fancy that. In summary, I'd say this series is a truly enjoyable read for fantasy lovers and the like. If you're not into fantasy stuff, however, you might not find it all that interesting. Anyhow, thanks for listening. If you like this video, please subscribe. Cheers!